Continuing with the four major organic molecules of life, we are looking at lipids. Lipids are nonpolar, which means they're hydrophobic, so they do not dissolve in water. And being nonpolar means that they don't have a charge anywhere, so they don't want to get involved in hydrogen bonds. They don't want to bond with water molecules. Since water molecules want to bond with themselves, the water molecules cluster together and the nonpolar molecules are isolated, as what occurs when you put oil on top of water. So oil is a lipid, and it forms little what look like bubbles on the surface of the water because the water molecules are attracted to each other and not to the oil droplet. So the oil droplet molecules are isolated. We have four important groups of lipids in living organisms: our triglycerides, steroids, waxes, and phospholipids. Triglycerides are not always bad. We think about triglycerides in a negative context most of the time, but a triglyceride is a fat. So enzymes link three fatty acids to a glycerol in dehydration synthesis. So remember, our friend dehydration synthesis removes a water molecule to allow things to bond together. So that's how those fatty acids are linked to the glycerol. We have saturated and unsaturated fats. Saturated fats tend to be animal fats. They are animal fats. Saturated means that they are saturated with hydrogens. So every single possible bonding space within a saturated fat has a single bond and it has a hydrogen bonded to it. So you get this very uniform shape. So that's why we would say it's saturated. It cannot hold any more hydrogens. Because of that and because of the uniformity, they can pack very closely together. This is why saturated fats can be problematic, because in packing close together, they tend to be solid at room temperature. And within our bodies, they can build up in our arteries because of the ability to clog, to kind of pack together and form these clots of fat, basically. Unsaturated fats are produced by plants, and they are also typically oils. They're called unsaturated because they have double bonds in places. And so that double bond kind of knocks some hydrogens out, but also gives them this kinked type structure. Basically, that means they cannot pack as closely together. So that's why plant oils are considered healthier than animal fats for cooking. They do not pack together as closely in the arteries, and they do not form the clusters because they just don't have the ability to stick together. Um, Fats do have some important functions. They're sources of energy. When you eat fats, they slow your digestion. Fat around your body cushions your organs, and it also helps you to retain your body heat, acting as an insulator. Fats can be unhealthy when they are consumed in excess. Fat consumption is associated with diabetes, heart disease, and cancer. Our second group of lipids is steroids. Now, when we think about steroids, we often think about anabolic steroids and weightlifting and things like that. And we think that steroids are necessarily a bad thing, but they're actually not. Steroids are very important in the body. So, a steroid is a lipid with four interconnected carbon rings, as you can see in the image. And you'll see that it is a hydrocarbon. So, remember that at each point of those rings, there is a carbon molecule, and then it has hydrogens and oxygen. Examples of steroids are vitamin D, cortisone, and cholesterol. Cholesterol is important. We hear about cholesterol and we think, oh, my cholesterol is high and I'm going to have to start taking cholesterol medicine. Yes, you want to avoid bad cholesterol, but cholesterol does play an important role in the body. It's the raw material for sex hormones. So it's used in synthesizing sex hormones in animal cell membranes. Our third group are the waxes. Waxes are fatty acids combined with alcohols or hydrocarbons, and they form a stiff water repellent material. So most of you are probably familiar with wax from things like crayons and candles. A honeycomb, obviously, some of them you can see the comb, and if you've ever touched it, you know that it has that waxy feel to it. Earwax, which I have incorrectly spelled on this slide. We have so the earwax that our bodies produce, that is a wax, and it protects the insides of our ears and protects those hairs in our ears that are responsible for hearing. Obviously, excess earwax can interfere with hearing. And one of the most interesting and important places that waxes occur is as coating on the surfaces of plant leaves and stems. And so the fact that plants have kind of that shiny look to leaves, that's because they have a waxy covering on the outside of them. And that's really important because it keeps the plant from dehydrating. Plants are, like animals, are almost entirely water. So if you took if you think about a log, a freshly cut log is really heavy, and that's because, or a tree that falls, when it first falls, it's so heavy you cannot move it. And that's because it has so much water in it. Once the water has evaporated or drained out of the plant, once it's fallen down, the branch then or a log, you can pick it up pretty easily once there's no more water in it. So much of the mass is water. So if a plant loses too much water, then it wilts and it can potentially die. So that waxy coating helps to hold moisture within. Um, and it's not just on the surface of the leaves, it can also be on stems and other parts of plants as well. But you can see again, hydrocarbon chain, common molecules of life. And the last one is phospholipids, and we'll talk a lot more about this when we actually start getting into cells. But phospholipids, all cell membranes are formed from this phospholipid bilayer. So we have polar heads and nonpolar tails. So the polar heads are oriented outward, the nonpolar tails, because they're not attracted to the polar parts of the molecules, they orient themselves to the inside and create this bilayer that forms the barrier that controls what goes into and out of cells. And the cell membrane itself is pretty interesting, and we'll be looking at that in detail down the road.